Hey, good evening, everyone, or good morning, or good afternoon, whatever time you happen to be watching this. I'm Marty Walzer. I run the blog Raging Owlbear on blogspot.com. And I'm just going to talk about Storm King's Thunder for the next few weeks, hopefully. I'm running the Storm King's Thunder campaign, and I was going to kind of blog about some of the things that my players were doing in the game, just throw out ideas and tips and whatnot. But writing all that, it was kind of a pain in the ass. I just don't have that much time to do really long form articles on my blog. So I thought I'd just try a few video blogs on it, just for the heck of it. So I started a series called first running Nightstone and then running Storm King's Thunder on the blog, which just has some tips that I wrote up from my first few sessions with my group and some ideas on how to kind of prep for Storm King's Thunder. And I got some of my ideas just in terms of prep from another vlog. I hate that word, vlog. Another video blog that Tom Lommel, otherwise known as the Dungeon Bastard, ran for his organized play group, where he was playing weekly at one of the game stores at one of the official organized play events for Wizards of the Coast. And so he did this very in-depth web series about his experiences, his prep, and his post-game stuff. And it's really good stuff. It's called Disorganized Play. He's also running it for his current game, but the Storm King's Thunder version is excellent. I watched hours upon hours of it. He recorded something like 52 or 54 hours worth of content, and some just talking about his prep, some talking about just ideas for dungeon mastering, DMing an adventure like Storm King's Thunder or other large epic adventures, and as well as some of his post-game experiences once he ran a particular session and talked about how it went. Anyways, I'm not going to go in as in-depth as he does. I just don't have that kind of time or energy. And his stuff is amazing. So you can go ahead and go watch that after this. Don't watch it now. Watch this first, because I told you to watch this. Then go check out Tom Lommel. In any case, I started on my blog, like I said, writing about Nightstone and some of the early chapter stuff with Storm King's Thunder. And this is an adventure that does require a pretty extensive amount of prep, simply because chapter 3, for those of you who may not be familiar with Storm King's Thunder, it has kind of an opening chapter that sets up the difficulty with the giants. And then it has sort of a really wide open sandbox in the middle before you actually jump into the main plot of the book. It has this huge sprawling, I'm going to run all over the Sword Coast and just do side quests and get hooks into the storyline. And it's just really wide open. So you could just jump past all that, honestly, if you really wanted to. You could jump right into the meat of the plot if you wanted to lead your players in that direction. But there's a lot of those in between levels you have to kind of fill in, because if you jump them right into the heavy plot, they're going to have to be 5th, 6th, 7th level, especially before they start taking on some of the bigger giant battles. If you go up against the hill giants, you should be at least 5th or 6th level. And then you go up against, if you were to do the stone giants, you want to be 7th or 8th, somewhere in that realm. If you're going to do the stone giants, the fire giants, the frost giants. Anyways, the chapter 3 has this massive travel log that spans the Sword Coast. It's got like 160 entries that are some, a long paragraph, some just 3 or 4 sentences, but a whole number of hooks that are multi-paragraph. Like, here's a scenario set up, and it's up to the DM to take that scenario setup, sort of flesh it out into a full encounter or a role-playing event, or something along those lines. So I definitely recommend. What I ended up doing for my game is I went through chapter 3 with a Google Doc open, and I wrote a 2-sentence summary of everything that was going on in chapter 3. I mean, and so if we were to look in the book as an example, you know, they have you see, there's Everlund, one of the major cities, and you know, you can see some of these are just like a paragraph on, you know, Evermore Way. It's basically one of the roads, and it says, hey, you know, Evermore Way travels between here and here. Here's kind of, you know, what's going on in that vicinity. You know, and it talks about all the little towns. You know, there's a big section on Everland. There's, you know, smaller sections on little towns like Amphale and, you know, Citadel Fellbar. There's 3 or 4. And then, yeah, some of them. So to talk about Fellbar as an example, you probably can't see it, but there's a little suggested encounter, which basically says, here's what's going on in the Citadel if your players happen to visit it. And here's a scenario you could throw at them. And so then it's up to you to take that hook that they provided, and they say, oh, you know, here's some guys and they're trying to infiltrate. And maybe the PCs happen to be there at the time that this infiltration happens, and they have to try to help stop it. Or maybe it's already happened, and the king and queen say, hey, you know, we could really use your help hunting these guys down, or, you know, those types of things. There's lots of these little plot hooks sprinkled all throughout chapter 3. So like I said, I went through and I made a Google Doc, and I basically wrote 2 to 3 sentences on average for each entry in there. I left out a few, like where it just said, hey, this is a forest that's between this town and this town, and it has trolls and orcs in it, you know. Or maybe I made that one sentence that said forest with trolls and orcs, look out, you know, or something along those lines, you know. So a few of the entries that didn't have a whole lot of detail, but were more just descriptive of the area, I just left off my list. What I really went through is I went through all the stuff that actually did have some sort of plot hook or potential encounter, or, you know, anytime there was an NPC mentioned. So I said, you know, this, you know, Bob's Tavern in Everland, you know, Bob's the owner and he has a magic sword, and if you do this favor for him, maybe he says, oh, you know, I hear you're fighting the giants, here's a magic sword, you know. And actually there's a lot of that in Storm King's Thunder. There's a lot of like people who apparently just have magic weapons or whatnot, and they're just like, hey, you're fighting giants, okay, cool, here's an axe, or here's a sword, or something like that. I mean, it's kind of silly, but it's D&D, what can you say? But anyway, so I made entries in this Google Doc, you know, 100 plus, with 2 or 3 sentences, and it helped me do 2 things. It familiarized me with all of the stuff that was kind of could potentially I could throw at the players, you know, and the NPCs. And then, you know, after I sort of wrote up the document, I went through in the Google Doc and used the little highlight thing, and I just kind of highlighted in different colors the stuff that I thought, oh, this is kind of cool. Even if the players don't go here or something like that, I want to use that idea somewhere. And so I went through and, you know, did like a really bright color for the stuff that I thought, oh, this is really excellent. And then I did like a medium shade for, this is kind of cool. If they happen to go into this area, then, you know, I can do something with this. And then I used like a gray, light gray shading for, hey, here's an idea if I have nothing else to kind of run that night, or it could be moved around easily. It wasn't necessarily tied to a particular area, but it was just something sort of a generic hook. And they have several of those as well. They not only do they have area-based sort of site adventure hooks, but they do have some of they have like the wandering monster table, so to speak. And it's encounters with NPCs, it's encounters with monsters. Some of them are very specific to the plot, like, you know, hey, the fire giants are doing this thing that links right now. I'm trying not to do too many spoilers for in case my players are watching, and, you know, in case there are some other players who may be watching. there'll be mild spoilers, but I'll try to avoid them. But anyways, the encounter might say the fire giants are doing this thing. It relates directly to what their plot point is. And it's very transportable. So the nice thing is you could be like, they're doing a traveling sequence, which there's a lot of in Storm King's Thunder, because like I said, it covers the entire Sword Coast. Your players are going to be going from point A to point B to point C, but you're going to be traveling all around the place. So anyways, there's a lot of these things that you can just drop anywhere. You can be like, okay, cool. I know they're going to be traveling between this town and this town. There's like 200 miles that they got to go, and at 24 miles per day, they're going to be on the road for like a week. Even if they're moving pretty fast, they're going to be on the road for several days. I'm going to do like 1 or 2 random encounters along the way, and then you can pick and choose, or you can roll randomly if you really want to. I kind of did the pick and choose because it's just easier that way. I didn't want to just roll and come up with some crappy result, and then while they're sitting at the table, be like, oh, no, I don't want to play that one. Let's play something else. So I tried to sort of pick out the ones that I thought were useful, and then had them sort of at the ready, so to speak, sort of on the side. And actually for some of the ones that were more involved, I would make a one-sheeter if I had to. So I had the Google Doc, which had all the little 2-sentence entries. And then if I knew I was going to run certain encounters, I'd write up one sheet, have like a summary of the main monsters, their stats, their base stats, AC, hit points, their main, melee attack and weapon attack. And I try to have the books nearby too, so I could look at the full text. But I would write up a little mini summary so I could just kind of rattle off what their actions were quickly without having to flip pages a lot. And that's another thing is that, if you have a copier at work and you can get away with it, copy stuff out of the monster manual and staple it together into a little encounter packet, because that was a bit of a lifesaver, is not having to flip back and forth through the book. I copied 2 or 3 pages of the main monsters that I needed. I would jot down other, the minor monsters, like a goblin, orc. Those guys are easy enough to write a 2-sentence or 2-line description that you don't need to keep referring to the book. But, some of the giants and anything that has like a special attack, copy the pages out of monster manual, staple them together, be like, boom, there's my night of adventuring. I have my packet ready if my players do that encounter. So you sort of pre-scope some of the encounters out. Where's it? Oh, you know what? I kind of dove right into my content. I should back up and do a little bit of the introduction. Like I said, I wrote a couple blog entries about running Nightstone, and I wrote a blog entry about Chapter 3, which I was just talking about. But I also wanted to talk about some of the ways I got the characters hooked into the adventure beyond just the Chapter 3 stuff and the Wandering Monster stuff. Because this adventure is kind of so sprawling all over the place, and especially some of the first giant encounters that the players have after Nightstone, they can run into, they can run over to Golden Fields, they can go up to Tribor, and go even further, way up to Bryn Shandar and 10 towns and the cold stuff. So what I kind of wanted to do is the Nightstone hooks. The Nightstone stuff was pretty weak to get them into the main plot. They go to Nightstone and people die and whatnot, and so the quests are all like, hey, this guy died, could you go tell their next of kin that they're dead? I mean, I like this adventure, don't get me wrong, I like this adventure, but there were a lot of weak spots where they could have done a little bit better in terms of how are we going to hook the characters into the plot. Here's some ideas. Especially given that they spent dozens of pages on 164 encounter locations. Chapter 3, they probably could have taken 5 of those pages, cut out some of that content, and that was not 100% necessary, and said, here's some other hooks that will get your players to the plot. So what I ended up doing is that we were playing the first few levels prior to Storm King's Thunder. I actually didn't start them out at level 1. They were I was already in the middle of a campaign. The giant book came out, and I was like, I really want to run this. So I kind of hooked them in. What I ended up doing is I set up a scenario where they were, that I was running, and it actually just out of coincidence could tie in. And so what I did is I gave them a sort of a fetch quest to Golden Fields, and I said they were in Hamlet. I was running a version of the village of Hamlet and it was kind of a mix between Keep on the Borderlands and the village of Hamlet. And then what I ended up doing is giving them a hook that said, okay, you have to go to Golden Fields. There's some contracts that need delivery. They had already built up a reputation in there in Hamlet and the surrounding countryside. And I said, the guys need you to bring some contracts to Golden Fields. There's a food exchange, a trading deal basically needs to be done. They weren't responsible for doing any negotiation. All that had been done. They're just like, take these papers, bring them over there. And I give them a couple other little things along the way. And so that worked good because I set up Golden Fields even before anything had happened. They were going there anyways. And so, I kind of set up that scenario. And then what I ended up doing is that Nightstone was just along the way. It just happened to be along the road or sort of off the road just a little bit, but it was a good place to stay. It was a good stopover point. So I said, hey, you're going to travel for a few days. Nightstone's over here. You can go stop there, to get out of the wilderness for a little bit, for a day or two. And then you can truck up to, Golden Fields. And I'm actually running, don't recommend you doing this necessarily, but I'm not running Forgotten Realms. I'm running a version of Nentir Vale, which is for those of you familiar with 4th edition, was a really nice campaign setting it was a generic sort of campaign setting that they put in the Dungeon Master's Guide and a few of the other 4th edition source books. I loved it. I mean, it had that really feel of early Forgotten Realms and Greyhawk when everything was kind of a blank slate, when you first get one of those campaign settings and you're not burdened by canon or whatever. I don't know. For whatever reason, it attracted me. I loved it. It was points of light. So I was like, I want to run Storm King's Thunder, but we're doing it in Nentir. And so I don't necessarily recommend anybody do this because there's so many places in the Sword Coast that you're going to turn your homebrew setting into the Sword Coast very quickly. So what I ended up doing is I renamed a few of the towns. I added some Forgotten Realms cities into Nentir, and then I took some of the existing Nentir cities and made them something that was in Storm King's Thunder. So that, which is not necessarily a good idea. It was more work than I wanted to do, but I'm kind of winging it too. My players, I even made a little map. I modified an Nentir Vale map and added some additional spots on it that were from Storm King's Thunder so that they could have here's the region, stuff like that. But it's very nebulous. I say, oh, this city's over here and this place is over here. And, a week later I could sort of change my mind. They may not even notice because not everything's on the map. But getting back to where I was before I took this wild tangent, I set up Golden Fields beforehand, and I tried to set up a little bit of the other thing. I wanted them not just to go to Golden Fields, but I wanted them to go to Tribor or Bryn Shandar. And I decided later that I'd do Tribor after watching actually Tom Lommel's Dungeon Bastards video cast, because he had a really cool idea for the running Tribor, what he did with his players, and I just stole it. I mean, I'm telling you right here, I have no shame. He had a great idea, and he was putting that stuff out there so people would steal it. And I did. I took it and I sort of made it my own. I modified what he did a little bit, but it actually ran great. And I'm going to talk about that in one of the next episodes. I don't want this one to run too long, but so I wanted them. I didn't want to waste. There's so much content in Storm King, especially with the different giants. I didn't want to be like, okay, you go do the hill giants and then you jump right to the next big plot point. There's the hill giants and the stone giants and the fire giants and the cloud giants. There's so many little things going on with all the different giant races, I was like, I want them to see that this is not just, oh, the hill giants have raided Goldenfield, go kill hill giants. I wanted to say that, no, something's going on. Nightstone was attacked by cloud giants. Goldenfield's getting attacked by hill giants. Tribor got attacked by fire giants or whatever. I was really setting the scene that there's something big going on, and you guys have no idea what it is, and nobody really knows what it is except the giants. But all the little people, so to speak, the small folk, as they call them, all the normal people who are between 5 foot and 7 feet tall, have, basically no idea what's going on. And so, I'm trying to make it a little bit of a mystery as well. I mean, it already is a mystery, but I'm trying to milk some of those aspects of the investigation part of it. What's going on with the giants? How do we, keep them from attacking? What do we need to do to sort of help alleviate that situation? So, I'm looking at the long game. I know I want them to get involved in the big plot points that are coming up with Imrith and, some of the others. I'm not going to try to make any, again, keep the spoilers on the down low, just in case any of my guys are watching, or gals. My wife is in my campaign as well. So that is the gist of what the advice I'm trying to give you in this particular video, is that when you go through and write down all those hooks or make a summary of the ones that you really like, try to feed them some of the clues out to your party even before they get really deep into the plot. I mean, if you throw them right into Nightstone right away, yeah, that's great. That works fine. They'll level up quickly and they do some of that. But the funny thing about Nightstone is that what happens in Nightstone just kind of goes away. They don't really, it doesn't get touched upon in the book at all. You could tie it into the Cloud Giants later. You could say that maybe one of that particular castle that attacked Nightstone, maybe it was one of the Cloud Giants that the PCs encounter, or an associate of the Cloud Giants that the PCs may encounter. But yeah, the book really leaves that wide open. It doesn't resolve that at all. And of course, the characters immediately are trying to jump on that. They want to find they're like, who did this? We gotta find that dude, that those guys that did this. And so that's the quest that they want to do, and the book doesn't give you a whole lot to go on. And of course, they were still pretty low level at that time, so I was like, well, you guys may not be ready to take on Cloud Giants yet, but we'll put that in the back pocket, and so I'll probably pull that out in some form later, as they move through, because it was interesting. I started having them do all the side quests. Like I said, we had already started a campaign. They were already level 4, level 5 by that time they hit Nightstone, so I had to buff up all the creatures that were in Nightstone. It wasn't just goblins; it was some hobgoblins. I had a couple ogres coming in. Basically, when they got to Nightstone, they just basically found the scouting party, and the bigger force was headed on its way. I threw out the orcs. I said, "Nah, the orcs are dumb. It's too complicated. We're going to keep it goblins and hobgoblins, and then a couple of their ogre chiefs. They're not chiefs, but tanks. They have some ogre tanks, and so I ran Nightstone that way with a little bit more creatures. It still wasn't too difficult for them because it was still mostly goblins, but the hobgoblins added a little bit. I added some more wargs. I made it a little bit more challenging, and we had a good time with it. It worked out really well, and especially I took the dripping caves and I buffed the crap out of that too. I put 2 hill giants in there, and the hill giants were from Groodhog. They were sort of refugees from Groodhog. They left Goo's service, and then they were just hanging out with the goblins and hobgoblins because they're like, hey, we can bully the hobgoblins and the goblins and hobgoblins around to feed us, we're not going to do somebody else's crap work. We're going to get these guys to work for us. And so they were just basically the big bullies. So when the Nightstone scene happened and half the citizenry are over in the caves over there in the dripping caves, that worked out really well because they my players they're not particularly stealthy, or rather they have stealth available to them, but they get impatient. Then they're not a whole about the scouting. So that was, I was trying to give them hints that there's other ways into the caves that they could, if they searched around, that maybe there'd be a back door or something. They're like, nah, screw it, we're going up the front door. So they did. They just walked right in the front door. But it actually made a really fun battle, and so they went in, fought a bunch of stuff, and then they ended up having to parlay with the goblins because the goblins had hostages. They said, "Hey, we're gonna start killing hostages. If you guys keep coming in here trying to kill us, we're gonna kill the hostages." Because they put down the hill giants actually really quickly. Since they went up the front door, I pulled the hill giants immediately. I threw them in front, had them go basically toe to toe, and the hobgoblins were, shooting artillery, bows and whatnot, while the ogres were trying to beat up on the party. But then they killed ogres while the hill giants were beating up the party. But they put down the hill giants pretty quickly, and so the hobgoblin chief was immediately like, "All right, they're going to come in and slaughter us. So I'm going to use the hostages as a bargaining chip." And that's exactly what they did. They said, "Hey, look, you guys don't screw with us. You can have the hostages. You can have all the villagers back. And we'll leave. So you got to give us safe passage or we'll kill the hostages." And the party agreed. They said, "All right, our mission was to rescue the Nightstone villagers. And they wanted to kill all the rest of the people, obviously. And they killed a lot of them." But they're like, "You know what? If we go off book, if we try to go in there and slaughter, they're just going to start killing villagers." And which is exactly what I was going to do. I was going to be like, "All right, you can go in and run in and start to beat up stuff, but those villagers are going to die. At least maybe not all of them, but a good number of them." And so they did the right thing. They negotiated for the hostage release and they let the goblins go and the rest of the hobgoblins. So, and I brought a little closure to that too. I told them that in the long run, the elves caught up with the goblins and hobgoblins and put most of them down. So I didn't make it feel like they were totally like, "Oh, we lost. We totally, had to give up we had to let the bad guys go over that." I gave them some closure on that. But it actually turned out to be a really fun adventure. They explored, even after the hobgoblins left, they explored the caves. I threw in a couple other sort of random monsters, some carrion crawlers that were in this one ravine where the goblins would throw their, dead bodies or their poop, whatnot. So the carrion crawlers were just digging around. And then I even had an Udia. At one point they went down this hole and there's an Udia down there. So I tried to make it fun for even higher level characters, and it was a good time. Which brings me to my next piece of advice. And then I'm going to wrap this up and talk more about what I did with Golden Fields, what I did with Tribor in an upcoming episode. But in this one with Dripping Caves and Nightstone and sort of setting up the plot, the other thing that is kind of a cool, fun piece of advice is that I tried to do something, and I can't do it every week because nobody has the time, but I try to do something interesting for some of the larger set piece encounters. And so what I did is for the Nightstone stuff and the Dripping Caves, and I'll post pictures on my blog and link to it here in the notes, is, I had some Dwarven Forge. So I went ahead and I tried to build as much of the Dripping Caves as I could with what I had. And it was a stretch, but I was able to do the main big chamber with the Dwarven Forge that I had, because I had some Dwarven Forge caverns and a little bit of the dungeon pieces. So I kind of was able to do a pretty good approximation of what was in the book of at least the central chamber. I didn't do all the side stuff. I don't have that much. because believe me, that main chamber took up pretty much every cavern and piece that I own, and a number of the floors from the regular dungeon tiles for the Dwarven Forge, because I did the Kickstarter a few years back. And it looked great, and the players loved it. And not everybody can afford a big Dwarven Forge setup, obviously, or things like that. But if you have a big set piece encounter, it's nice to do something with a 3D element in it. And it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't have to be Dwarven Forge. You can just craft something out of cardboard, or I don't know, anything. You know what I mean? Just add a little bit of, maybe you draw the map on a big piece of paper. There's oh, by the way, if you're watching this and it's still January-ish, I went out to the dollar store and looked at their leftover Christmas wrapping, and let me quickly grab it here for you just to show. So they the dollar store had a bunch of leftover Christmas wrapping. There's some cars, but the best thing about this, 50 cents for a thing of wrapping. And you're like, oh, why do I care about Christmas wrapping? Well, the best thing is that some of the wrapping paper, lots of it actually, if you look on the back side, you can see it. Hard to see in the camera, but look at that. There's a nice little 1-inch grid in a very light blue thing. So you could throw this Christmas wrapping out on the table, draw it up. Even if you have a dry erase map, you can draw the wrapping paper up in advance, have cut it out, have pieces, lay down your dungeon piece by piece, if you want, or something crazy like that. Fog of War. But yeah, this is it's like 40 inches wide, and it's not very long, but it was 50 cents, 40-inch wide, and then I think it was at least 6 or 7 feet long. It wasn't a huge roll of wrapping paper. I mean, it's 50 cents after all, even with the post-Christmas sales. But 40 inches by, what's 7 feet, 8 feet, 100 inches, 40 inches by 100 inches. So 400, is that, no, I'm sorry, 4,000 square inches or whatever. You can do a big ass map on this, or, cut it down to lots of smaller maps. So I bought several rolls at the dollar store, and I think I'm going to go back and hopefully they'll have some left, because this is really cool. You can buy the gaming paper, which I do have also. I bought several rolls of that, but that stuff's like $4 a roll, and it is long. I don't remember how many feet it goes out to, like 20 feet, maybe something like that. But it's actually not as wide. It's 30 inches wide. And the wrapping paper is 40 inches wide. So even though the wrapping paper is shorter, it's only 50 cents. And so I guarantee you buy $4 worth of that wrapping paper, and you're going to have a lot of 1-inch grid paper to draw on. Because you get eight rolls of that at, whatever, 8 feet per roll. It may not have been 8 feet long. It may have been closer to 6. But point is, 40 feet of wrapping paper by 40 inches for $4. I mean, go to the dollar store now and see if there's any of those rolls left. But you do have to check the rolls. Not all of them have the grid on the backside. But the ones that I saw in the dollar store, you could look and you could see the inner ring, and you could see if it was gridded or not. 50 cents. I'm telling you, that's what you got to go do. Anyways, back to my point. The big set piece adventures, the big set piece encounters, try to build something, put something on the table that gives a little pizzazz, even if you don't play with minis. Maybe play that one encounter with minis, or at least if you don't play on the grid, if you don't play minis with the grid and do more theater of the mind, you can at least use minis for representation. You're approximately over here. Oh, how long is it going to take me? How can I move over there in a turn? Sure. Yeah. go ahead. You can do approximate distances. You don't have to play the grid if you don't want to play the grid. But I like having visuals for these set piece encounters. They look great. The players love it. They're a little bit of work. Actually, I'm going to grab, if I can find it real quickly, one other piece that I made for a different encounter that I'm going to talk about later. Give me 2 seconds again. So I go on the DM Scotty board. Sorry, pardon me. Watch some of the YouTube crafters, and so I wanted to do a little of that just for the fun. So I made something for an upcoming encounter that I thought actually that they were going to do several months ago, but they wandered all over the place, so they totally missed this encounter. I wasn't going to try not to railroad them into anything. I'm letting them wander and pick the hooks that they want to do. But, I made like a little sort of ruined castle tower. Got a removable floor, but, I glued a bunch of styrofoam together, made a ring, built some debris pieces like floor, spiral staircase for the interior. Here, let's see if you can get a good view. But so just this took some time. This was an advanced project. This is something that I want to reuse several times. I didn't just do it for like a one game night session, but I just thought it'd be fun to build something. I was in a crafty mood. So, and I had these styrofoam sheets that cut into these little bricks, and I just PVA white glue built this structure, and then added some of those like things that you get at the railroad stores, the terrain bits and pieces, just for the fun. You don't have to get this complex. I did a simpler craft that for a different encounter, which I'm actually going to talk about in next week too, in a couple episodes, because this one actually came out really awesome. I was really pleased with the results. I found an adventure that related to Storm King's Thunder really closely in Dungeon Magazine number 144, and so I decided to do some crafting I wanted to make the caverns. Not use Dwarven Forge, but just make it out of cardboard and whatnot. So I cut out some cardboard. I used this technique that I saw on YouTube from one of the crafting guys, where he just takes the cardboard and crinkles it up to make the walls, make like cavern walls. And it makes like this really nice, well, you can see for yourself. So this was one of the caverns I created. I put some water in it. I got pretty fancy with this one. I put some water in it. I have these little sandy sort of beach areas. I made a little whirlpool, a little like a sinkhole whirlpool for the river, for the cavern. But basically this is just pieces of cardboard, and I put a little foam board for the beaches. I cut foam board. But this is just corrugated cardboard with a whole crap load of hot glue. And then the same for the walls. So this is the technique that he was showing. I think it was Wylock. I want to say it's Wylock videos. I'll put the links in the notes. But he basically took these cardboard strips, double corrugated. You can't use a single for this stuff. You need something a little heavier. So the double corrugated cardboard, and you crinkle it up, and then you hot glue it. You cut out your form. So here's the form that I cut out from a box from a company that shall not be named. I cut out the form, and then I just glued this stuff on top of it, spray painted it black, added some details. This one I got fancy with. Of course, I put this. This is that realistic water from Woodland Scenics. I think it's called Realistic Water. And so I built the little river section. I built, the sand. I have another section that I built, more of the water and the sand, stuff like that. Some rocks. Yeah, you can see the little beachy areas. I put some glued down some rock bits, little mini rocks, whatever. But point is, I went a little crazy. And again, you don't have to get this fancy. Let me, if I have the other piece here, 1 second. Okay, so yeah, here's a piece, no water. I just cut out a cavern shape. I need a passageway into the little stomach-shaped area. Build a cavern, so wide passage on one end, narrow passage out on the other end. Glued cardboard together, painted it, put some sand, put some white glue. Mod Podge is one of the glues I used. Threw some sand on it to give it texture. Painted it. Brown, little watered down black, just browns and yellows and blacks. So anyways, just to make a sandy texture. And so I put those pieces together on the table. I was running an encounter with lizard men in a water cavern, and I got to tell you, it went phenomenally well. It just set the mood. And again, that took a few nights crafting and putting stuff together. Yeah, that was you don't have to get that fancy, but if you do little things, maybe you just build or find pieces of styrofoam to glue together to make little rock formations. Put them on a flat, make a flat map on the paper, draw it on the paper, gaming paper, draw it on old Christmas paper rolls, or whatever. Do it on if you have a flip map, or you know what I mean, a plain battle map that you do the dry erase or the wet erase on. Build some 3D elements, build little rock formations, trees, I don't know, just do some little stuff to make the battlefield kind of interesting for a big fight. It's just fun. You'll have fun with it. The players will appreciate it, even if it's just a little bit of effort. It goes a long way to sort of set the mood for those bigger fights. So I really enjoy doing that. It does take up a lot of the stuff I do. Does take up a bit of time, but I got to tell you that that cavern adventure with the lizard men in the water and everything was so much fun. And I'm going to talk about that in an upcoming episode, because if you're running Storm King's Thunder, you need to run this adventure. I found it in Dungeon 144. It's called something like Assault on Morak Tor or something Morak Tor. I can't remember the exact name, but Dungeon number 144. It was written for 3rd edition. I basically just used the same monsters with 5th edition stats, I tweaked it a little bit because they were a higher level. They were at 5th level already, and knocking on the door 6th level, and the adventure is written for like 4th level, basically, for a 3rd edition or Pathfinder game. Didn't matter though. I just threw a bunch of lizard men at them. If I thought they were doing too well against them, I'd just throw a few more in. It was a cavern full of whole tribe of lizard men, so you can just scale it on the fly. If I thought I was overwhelming them, I'd tweak it down. But they were doing great. They were just smacking the crap out of lizard men, except they got to the last battle chamber, and I had that sinkhole. Well, I'm spoiling too much of it. Anyways, it was a great adventure. I'm going to talk about it in an upcoming episode. I've rambled on way too long, but I hope to do these at least one a week for a while, just to talk about some of the ideas that I had, and maybe give you some ideas of how to help your game with Storm King's Thunder, or even your game in general. That's the build-in stuff. That's a tip that you can take to any game. It doesn't need to be Storm King's Thunder. So I hope you enjoyed watching this. I hope I didn't ramble too much. And go ahead and if you have any questions about Storm King's Thunder, send them in. Maybe I'll do questions on the next episode that I want to do in a few days. All right. So this is Marty Walzer, the Raging Owlbear, signing out. Have a good day.